Hi everyone, my name is Juan Carlos Bascuñán and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about El Camino de Santiago. So what is the Camino de Santiago, or in English the Way of St. James? The Camino de Santiago is a series of Christian pilgrimage routes of medieval origin that, at least the most famous path departs from the Western Pyrenees and reaches Compostela, which in Galicia means sterry field, where it is believed that the tomb that houses the mortal remains of the Apostle Santiago el Mayor is located. It should be noted that the Camino de Santiago has been declared a World Heritage Site by the UNESCO. And in the image, you can see two of the most prominent symbols of El Camino de Santiago, which are the scallop shell, and on top of it, you can see drawn a red cross, which is the cross of the Apostle Santiago. But who was he? Who was Santiago el Mayor, or St. James the Greater in English? He was named El Mayor to differentiate him from another of Jesus' apostles, who was James the Lesser. Santiago el Mayor was one of the most prominent apostles of Jesus of Nazareth. He was the brother of John, who was another of Jesus' apostles. They were both fishermen at the time of being cast as followers by Jesus. It should be noted that Santiago el Mayor was the first of the apostles to die martyred at the hands of Herod Agrippa I in Jerusalem in 44 after Christ. When he died, the legend says that his body was transferred to Spain, and specifically to the province of Galicia, and that he was finally buried there. Centuries later, and around the 820 after Christ, this tomb was discovered, and a temple was built on top of it. And as the centuries passed, it was expanded to become the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela as we know it today. As it was believed that these mortal remains had a certain power of connection with God, that is why the Christians decided to make a pilgrimage route to ask for favors and to thank the apostle who they believed was buried in that place and that could help them with their problems. It is for this reason that an entire infrastructure was built from the Pyrenees to Galicia of roads, hospitals, and shelters to provide services to all pilgrims. And this is how this entire route was made a place of meeting and cultural exchange between different people from different European countries, acting this way as a strong cohesive axis of the European Christianity movement of the time, and at a moment when the fight against Islam in Europe and specifically in Spain was at its peak. In the images, you can see in the top image the location of the autonomous community of Galicia within Spain, and in the image from below, the location of the city of Santiago de Compostela within Galicia. Now, some numbers. The statistics say that more than 50% of the pilgrims declare that they go to Santiago for an explicitly religious interest, and another 30% more or less recognize both cultural and religious motivations in their walk. The growth in the number of pilgrims in recent years has occurred, above all, from the last two visits of the former Pope John Paul II, in the first one in 1982, and the second one for the World Youth Day in 1989, in which more than 500,000 young people accompanied the Pope. In the image, you can see the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela, whose construction began in 1075 after Christ. Now, in these images on the right, you can see the main routes of the Camino de Santiago. As you can see, there are many of them, and some of them can be extremely extensive. So, which one should I choose? Or which one should anyone that wants to go to Santiago de Compostela choose? Well, this is a very important decision because the length, the landscapes, the towns, the difficulty of each one of the routes are very differently from one another. So in the next slides, I will give some information about some of them, and although I will only focus on the roads within the Spanish territory, as you can see in the second image, you can see how the different roads extends over a vast expanse of Western European territory, because it really does. It's really impressive. So the first route that I'm going to be talking about is the French way. It is the most used route. It's chosen by 7 out of 10 pilgrims who go to Compostela, and the starting traditional point is at Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port in France. This path is traditionally used by pilgrims from all over Europe to reach Compostela, and it has the most complete signage and infrastructure of all the paths, which is a point for the French way. This route consists of 31 stages and 773 kilometers. You can also start the road from Somport, Aragon. So this is the traditional way starting point. Sorry, but this is another starting point, and it's totally fine. You can do whichever you want. But from Somport, there are 33 stages and 937 kilometers. So it's a little bit longer. As you can see in the images, I put one of the cities that you cross following this path, which is Leon. I put a very sunny image because the weather changes a lot depending on when you decide to start this trip. For example, in the image where you have so much snow, these people were right at the Pyrenees and they decided to do this trip in winter. So yeah, you can have a very variations in climate, and you have to choose also in which time of the year you'd like to do this trip to do it the best way you can. And this is an extra, which is the French way from Sarria. Well, Sarria is this red point here, and it's at the border of the, but it is close to the border of Galicia, is inside Galicia, so it's the last part of the French way. And I chose to put this here because it is the most popular Camino de Santiago route. It's a fraction of the French way, but it's the most popular one, and it's the one that almost everybody does. According to the Pilgrims Reception Office in Santiago Compostela in 2019, 96,124 people walked this route, which is the 27% of all the pilgrims who arrived in Santiago that year. So this route is one of the options to complete the required minimum 100 kilometers of traveling to Santiago de Compostela in order to be considered as a pilgrimage. And the total distance of this trip from Sarria to Santiago de Compostela is 116 kilometers. So it's much less than the 700 that we had in the complete French way. So now the northern path, or the one of the Cantabrian mountain range, which that's another name that this path has. This one, it is not as crowded route as the French one, but it is still quite popular. It is a route that arose in ancient times to avoid passing through lands under Muslim control during the pilgrimage to Compostela. The path begins in Irún, which is in Guipúzcoa, and forks in Oviedo, a place where pilgrims can choose to either end the north path or continue along the primitive route, which is the most common detour in Villaviciosa. The most common detour is in Villaviciosa. In this route, there are a total of 34 stages and 820 kilometers of walking or bicycling, whatever transportation method that you want to use to make these pilgrimage routes, it's fine. So the primitive way that I just spoke, it is called primitive because it was the one followed by the first pilgrim from Santiago de Compostela, who was the King Alfonso II of Asturias. This route was the most important in the first years of the pilgrimage to Compostela, and although the length of this route is shorter, it is known to be extremely demanding to a large number of slopes to overcome, many climbings and steps descents, and of course everything is complicated if there is also rain or if it snows in winter. And also the infrastructure for the pilgrims in this route is less developed than, for example, in the French way. Its extension is of 313 kilometers, and it has 13 stages. So now I'm going to talk to you about the stages, and I'm going to use the primitive way as an example. These are sections of the road between the different towns through which the certain road passes. At the end of each stage, there is necessary infrastructure so that the pilgrim can stock up and rest to later continue the pilgrimage. So it is a recommendation. You can, for example, start in Oviedo, finish that pilgrimage day in San Juan de Villabañada, for example. Those are 30 kilometers of walking, which is a lot, several hours. So if you want to rest, there's a place where you can do it. And in websites, you can find this. You have the stages of all the ways. I just put this here because it wasn't necessary to show you all of them. But that's the characteristic of this. When the stage finishes, you can find all the infrastructure that you need for feeding or for sleeping or for anything that you need, hospitals, whatever. So now, continuing with the ways, we have the Portuguese way. It is the second most popular route behind the French way. It is a path through which the pilgrims can travel part of Portuguese coast, making its journey from south to north. The other paths were always from the west to east. So this is different, and you can begin it in Portugal instead of France, for example. Its original starting point is in Lisbon, and the Portuguese capital. However, many pilgrims choose to start it from Oporto, Portugal, or Tui, which is already in Galicia. The length is 620 kilometers from Lisbon and consists of 25 stages. From Tui, for example, it is only 150 kilometers and just 6 stages. But as you can see, it's more than 100 kilometers, so it's a pilgrimage as well. Now, the English way. This was frequented in the Middle Ages by English, Scottish, Irish, Scandinavians, or Flemish pilgrims to reach Santiago through the port of A Coruña, which is in Spain. Here, the path is not very crowded, it is well signposted, but with a certain lack of services and accommodations compared to other routes. The English way has 2 variants, one from A Coruña, Camino do Faro, Galicia, with 110 kilometers, and the other one is from the town of Ferrol, with 96 kilometers of extension. And as you can see, they connect in some point and become to be the same path. And the Camino de Finisterre. This is the way to Finisterre and Muxia, or Muxia, I think is how it is pronounced. It is a beautiful extension of the Camino de Santiago. As you can see, you do this when you have already arrived to Santiago, so you have the option to continue the path to the west. And now these 2 different towns, one Muxia and the other one Finisterre. So nowadays, it is the final goal for many pilgrims. If after Finisterre you still want to walk more, if you chose to go to Finisterre first, there's one final stage, which is Muxia, and it is very impressive because it has a church on the ocean rocks, which is this one. Here you can get another diploma accrediting that you've walked the Camino de Santiago until the very end, because you get a first diploma when you arrive to Santiago de Compostela. It is the coast of Muxia and Finisterre where you can find the famous scallop shells in its natural environment. So those were the ways that I wanted to talk to you about, but just a little bit about the symbols. First, you have the Cross of Santiago, which is this half cross, half sword. It stands out for its striking red color, which symbolizes the blood shed by the Apostle Santiago. The Cross of Santiago is the distinctive symbol of the Order of the Knights of Santiago, which is a religious and military order founded in 1170. It took its name from the Apostle Santiago, which is the patron saint of Spain, by the way. So it is the most important saint in Spain, probably, and had among its objectives to protect the pilgrims along the Camino de Santiago from Muslims and thieves, and in addition, to give them shelter, food, and spiritual aid. Then you have the Concha de la Viera, or the shell of the scallop, which is the common scallop shell, or Pecten jacobaeus. So that's the name in Latin, and it comes from Jacobo, which is well, the actual name of the Apostle Santiago uh, in the old writings, Jacob. But I think it's also the name in German, Jacob or something like that. Well, this Concha de la Vira began to be used as a symbol of pilgrims to Santiago between the 11th and the 12th century. The pilgrims kept it in their hands, which is why it gradually ended up becoming a way of identifying them as pilgrims. And currently, it is possible to see it guiding the direction to follow in the different roads that lead to Santiago de Compostela, as you can see in the image. And there are a lot of souvenirs of these shells. You can also go to Finisterre or to Muxia to catch the shells by yourself. I don't know, but it's a very important symbol of this path, and it's very used in the signing. So that's it, and thanks for watching. I hope this was interesting for you as much as it was for me. As a conclusion, I just have to say that we in Chile, where I'm going to talk just about my country, we have some pilgrimage, routes, but they are not as big or as developed in infrastructure or in so many in the different options that you have in Santiago de Compostela are huge of routes, of cities that you can see while traveling. I think it's a great opportunity if you are in Spain, if you're Spanish, if you're European, if you are probably Christian, if you live in this, or maybe if you don't. I think it's a good trip, a good option to do, maybe in vacations. I particularly would do it in summer. I would never do this in winter, but I found it really interesting. The history behind the cathedral itself looks really great and pretty, and I don't know. It seems to be like a very inspiring trip. So if you can do it, if you are interested on it, I think you should do it. But thanks for watching and bye, Agur.